Hello, I'm Hal Lublin.
And I'm Mark Gagliardi.
Since the dawn of humanity, one issue has gone unsettled. With the fate of the world in the balance, we're here to settle, once and for all.
Best decade for music.
That's right. Don't worry, everyone. We got this.
Podcast should have a theme song. Podcast should not have a theme song. Yes, they should. No, they shouldn't. They sound good. Yeah, but people are just going to skip past it. You know what? You're right. We got this.
All right, we're coming in hot on this one. This is the best decade for music. We're each bringing 2 or 3 finalists. Here's what I'm going to say right now in the interest of expediency. If one of us has the same as another one, we don't have to introduce, we don't have to go scrounging and coming up with another one.
No.
If we had the same 3, let's say.
Then that would mean that those are the
Then
only
we have a
3 we have to
finalist.
talk about. Yeah, we're here to talk about the greatest decades for music.
Yeah,
That's what we're doing,
and I feel like rather than going through criteria now, I think it's going to become evident why we choose the decades we choose. Do you agree
I
with
don't
that?
know what I think our criteria would be different for each decade because each decade brings something different to music.
Yes. Do you want to kick it off with your first one and tell me why?
Here's the thing, Hal.
Ain't nothing but
I know we
heartbreak.
talked about this earlier, and you were like, look, in American popular music, there have been, 12 decades.
Yeah.
So we don't need to talk about 12 decades that show would be 4 hours long. Let's each bring in 2 or 3.
Yep.
And then I got to thinking about it, and then I got to reading about it, and then I got to studying it. I don't have 3, Hal. I don't have 2.
You have 1?
I have 1. I have 1. So I'm going to defer to you. Or how would you like to do this? Because I only have 1. Do you want to talk about mine now and see if the 2 or 3 that you've got, how they would try to play King of the Mountain on this? Or do you want me to wait till the end?
I want you to wait till the end like a magic trick and open
Okay.
it. Will you write it down on a piece of paper right now?
Yes.
And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to close my eyes and you can show it to Ken. By the way, this,
are you
this
going
hat
to
is
try
mesh
to
in the
wait,
back.
what's happening here? Are you trying to guess? Is that what
I'm trying to like somehow establish whatever you write down will be the thing. I'm going to trust that you will write down the actual.
Yeah. Yeah. I only wrote one thing down on a.
Okay.
This thing says flights on the other side because I was writing on some flights on it. So.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. So, I mean, when is the reveal of this, though? If we start talking about it.
Well, if I pick it right away, if my first one is the same, then,
well, look, here's the thing. I don't want to have to pretend that I haven't thought about this.
Yeah.
Like, that's a good idea.
If what I say, if my first decade is your only decade, then maybe we call it there and we just discuss that decade and what we like about it.
Sure.
And that it's not really about, and we can catch up too.
Yeah. You've had a long day. I'm flying to Japan in the morning.
Yeah.
It's nice to just chat.
What time is your flight?
I have to get to the airport at 7:30 because the flight's at 10:30. But right when they open up the check-ins, I can't do online check-in because the passport scanner on their mobile app isn't working. So I have to get there right in the morning because like Southwest, I've got to get a seat. Get a seat assigned.
Wow. You have to get there 3 hours early. It must be killing you.
It's killing me, dude. Don't worry. I'm not going to get there 3 hours early permanently. I'm going to go park there, get the boarding passes. Then I'm going to drive away, go to where I rented some parking for a few days that's offsite and cheaper, grab a little breakfast, then come back.
Fair enough.
You'll
still find a way to run
about 10:15.
Okay, cool. All right. I just want to make sure.
I'll still find a way to run to the gate. Yes.
To the gate. Awesome. All right. My first decade is, I think, kind of maligned for one specific genre of music that I actually think is a really good genre of music that just became very easy to hate and has influenced. The amount of influence in this decade, I think, is kind of off the charts, is the decade in which rap was born. And rock and roll took a huge step forward. It's the real birth of heavy metal, I think, and also the punk movement and disco. I'm going to go with the 1970s.
And you think everybody thinks of disco first, and that's the only genre of music.
I think they would count it against. I think they might count it against the 70s. But if you look at first of all, almost every act, so many acts put out disco. I mean, if you think I'm sexy, Miss You by Rolling Stones, like everybody, those are really good songs that are disco songs. But also, I Will Survive. There's so much great disco. And that's not the reason why I love it. I think the emergence of rap and hip hop out of New York City is super important, as is the development of punk music.
Mm-hmm.
And the intersection of those two, of Blondie helping to bring rap to the mainstream, but
I don't know this story, or I don't remember
really
it if I've heard it.
She sort of helped. I wouldn't say she's solely responsible for it, but she raps in one of her, in the name of the song is escaping me right now, but like,
she introduced rap by rapping, not by like, here are some artists that I'm going to tour
Rapture's
with,
the name of the song. But she wasn't like, I invented this new form of music. She was like, oh, I'm going to bring this. I'm going to do this as well. And I think it helped people realize the art form was there, but also like just incredible stuff being done in hip hop during that time. Also the emergence of Led Zeppelin, really like some of the hottest years of the Rolling Stones. And then on the other hand, you have people like the Carpenters emerging like this. It's this weird mix of all these different genres of music. And it almost feels like an incubator for the types of music we're still listening to now. That's really heavily like, how big is dance music now, right?
Yeah.
With like a driving beat and a bass line. All of that you can trace back to disco, which also you can trace everything back.
Sure, you can trace it back pretty far.
Yeah, to bang two rocks together. But to me, that's the first one I would throw out. Is that the decade you wrote down on that piece of paper?
No, it is not.
Okay.
But I like the decade of the 70s. I think the 70s, like you mentioned, is a lot of ingredients. There's a lot of great ingredients in the 70s that later turned into some really delicious dishes. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yes.
And I would include disco in that, and the influence of disco on lots of different genres of music, and the influence of the rock artists you're talking about. It feels like a step forward for a lot of things, and an emergence into the world for other new styles of music. So, yeah.
Okay.
I very much enjoy the 1970s music, but that's not the one that I had written down.
Okay. My next one would have been, or is, the decade right before that, which is the entire decade in which the Beatles existed. It is the time of British invasion. It's also got, I think, the best work of my two favorite country artists, which are Dolly Parton and Buck Owens and his Buckaroos.
Yeah.
Who Buck Owens had like an insane run, I think, of 17 number one hits.
That's
from
crazy.
His singles. Like tons of great music. I feel like
country, like were there just fewer country artists? Like it was all centered in Nashville, so.
No, and he was very he was Bakersfield. He was a Bakersfield
that's
guy.
Right. Buck Owens was Bakersfield Sound. He was Dwight Yoakam's influence.
Yes, he was which is why they did Streets of Bakersfield. The guy was like that was like his return after Hee Haw and while he was doing Crystal Palace, which is now closing. Edelstein and I were lamenting that. I got to go there in January of 2020.
Palace that's in Bakersfield?
It's in Bakersfield, yeah.
I've never been.
You may not get to go. It might be closed. Yeah. But I just think there was a lot of really cool music, great Motown stuff being made then. Funk was starting to come into its own. There was also great jazz music being produced, although I think I like jazz a little, like going back to like 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. I think there was really great stuff being done then. Going back to also like early Stevie Wonder, which then becomes Stevie Wonder at the height of his powers in the 1970s. So the 60s would be my next decade for music.
Yeah. I love the 60s as well. Like the 60s gave us the Beatles, man. The 60s gave us the soundtrack of the Boomers that the Boomers put in every movie that came out that we saw growing up. So we saw all these Boomer songs that we wouldn't have heard otherwise we caught in film and TV. Or like oldies radio. Like that's what oldies radio was playing when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Which is crazy now to listen to oldies radio and it's like here's Britney Spears and Guns N' Roses. Like, oh my God.
It's painful. I never thought that would be us.
Yeah.
But also in the 60s, the bubblegum pop was great. And even the manufactured groups like the Monkees and the Archies had great songs. I mean, the Monkees have a ton of great songs from the show. And they had world-class songwriters working on them.
I still think their best album was their last album.
Well, they had studio musicians for a time. They eventually learned to play their own. Yeah. I think Neil Sedaka wrote for them. Neil Diamond, maybe.
Oh, wow.
There were a few people. No, Glenn Campbell didn't write for them. A bunch of people did. Ken Plum get on here and list everybody who wrote every song. So could Josh Kagan, our pal Josh Kagan. He's a Monkees aficionado.
I do very much
decade
enjoy
for music.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's not the one.
Harry Nilsson wrote for them. Boyce, Hart. Those names mean anything to you?
I mean, I'm also reading them as they appear.
He's just giving us last names like, Boyce, Hart.
Yeah, I'm like, buddy, I don't know. And I know Harry Nilsson is the only one of these.
Yes. That one we know. Anyway.
And Rapture. Oh, wait,
and
he
Bret
texted that earlier. To be fair, I just opened up the chat page. And yes, Bret the Hitman Hart. He is wrestling with shadows all through the songs of the 1960s.
He's the best songwriter there is, the best songwriter there was, and the best songwriter there ever will be. 60s was not your decade.
No, Hal, the 60s was not my decade. I will tell you what decade I'm thinking of. Okay, you know what?
You want me to do another one, or
do you have another one?
Well, I'll tell you what. Why don't I throw out one more decade?
Okay.
And then we'll take a break.
So you do have three. I thought you said you had two.
And then you reveal. I'm kind of torn between two. I'll tell you the two I was torn between. Then we don't have to, unless one of them is the one. We'll reveal if one of them is the one after the break.
Okay.
One of them is the 1980s because of the further evolution of hip hop and the way electronic music sort of grew in that era. Also, you have Cyndi Lauper, Madonna, Van Halen. You have all these incredible acts that are out there making incredible music. Like genres are kind of exploding, all these subgenres. The way the Police were blending punk with like sort of art, like this like artsy kind of punk, post-punk.
Yeah.
It's a lot of punk happening then.
A lot of punk. You've mentioned punk a lot. I think you've mentioned punk in at least two of the decades now.
Dance music took a step forward as well. The other one, I would say, is the 1920s. And I will tell you why.
Interesting. Please.
It is because of how jazz emerged in that era and how bluegrass and folk music and country and blues exploded in that era. And if you take all of these different forms of music that we're talking about, and I think all forms of music are like braids, they're constantly crisscrossing one another.
Sure.
But you have these points where they're all coming to, you can trace everything back to like this period of time set the precedent for everything that came after. Like if the 60s or the 70s was an incubator period, that incubation is based on things that were happening decades earlier. And, you know, the Beatles and their success and the way they moved, and Beach Boys as well, the way those two bands evolved. Certainly the Beatles and the grand tradition of a lot of English bands of stealing music from Black people and either passing it off as their own or just heavily writing music that is based off that, but also like acknowledging it, which is at least they're acknowledging. If you keep tracing back, I feel like the 1920s is one of those points where everything intersects.
Interesting.
So that would be my other one. But for now, let's take a break. And when we come back, are you ready to reveal? Hold up the paper, but not ready. The part with the writing. Are you ready?
Yeah. You want me to show you right now before we go to the break?
No. I have an idea. When we come back from the break, I want you to explain why you picked the decade that you picked, but without specifically identifying things. I want to see if I can guess it just from your description.
Get pretty immediately. Okay. You know what? I'll let my description go on.
You'll be like, it's the 50s.
I'll let my description go on. That's the first thing I am going to say.
Yeah. You're just going to say what it is. Okay, great.
Yeah, I'll just say what it is. Yeah. It's like when you play draw something and it would get more and more difficult, but you and a buddy are trying to keep a streak going. So you would just write, it's a tree. And then they would type tree and they'd be like, wow, your streak is amazing. You two are so good at this. All right. We will take a quick break. And when we come back, I will reveal what I believe to be the greatest decade for music. And then we can we can put my decade up against whatever the best of Hal's decades. And we can talk about them and see what we come up with. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Travis McElroy. I'm here with Maria, and we're excited because as a member of the month, Maria, thank you so much for being a listener and a supporter of the show.
Hi.
How did you find out about the shows?
When my daughter was in high school, we kind of connected over Taz. She introduced me to Schmanners and Sawbones.
What made you decide to become a Max Fun member?
I kind of decided that with the economy being so difficult, it was worth me giving up my Starbucks to join in with you guys.
Well, Maria, I owe you a cup of coffee then. At some point, I'll get a cup of coffee into your hands to pay you back.
Okay.
Maria, again, thank you so much for your support.
Thank you very, very much for your time and getting a chance to be the member of the month. My daughter was shocked when she found out about it, so I can't wait for her to actually maybe catch a little bit of this. I can rub it in her face a little bit.
That's what we do it for. Thank you, and thanks to everybody for your support. Maria, have a great month.
You have an amazing month as well.
Become a Max Fun member now at MaximumFun.org/join.
Hey there. Do you like books about various shades of gray?
Maybe 50 of them? Or books about winged men searching for soulmates?
Is your e-reader full of stories that would pair well with Barry White in the background?
We're Bria and Mallory of Reading Glasses, and we have a brand new show for people who crave reads with just a dash of sriracha sauce.
That's right. Every other Friday, we dive into books that can be measured on the Scoville scale and talk to the people who love them.
You can find our new show by visiting MaximumFun.org/spicy. That's MaximumFun.org/spicy.
Okay, Hal, you previously mentioned jazz.
Yes.
There was a decade where jazz, that style of jazz from the 1920s that you mentioned, I think grew and grew and grew and reached an apex. And then what happened was there was a shift from jazz to vocalists. And when the shift from jazz to vocalists happened, then all the musicians who didn't have vocalists needed something interesting to do. So what did they do? They invented modern jazz. Pause right there. That's what now we're done with jazz. Okay. Now I'm going to move on to the blues. You mentioned the blues being the foundation for a lot of things. This decade introduced the jump blues, and the jump blues became the precursor to what later on became rock and roll. Do you know what decade I'm talking about yet? Do you have an idea? I'll keep going.
I think it's the 1940s, but keep going.
I'll keep going. It was also the era that began in New York City with a huge new musical from a couple of guys named Rodgers and Hammerstein called Oklahoma, launching the golden age of the Broadway musical. So when I'm talking about music, that's the music I listen to. Is the Great American Songbook that began in the I almost said it. The Great American Songbook that actually began in the 1880s, but reached its peak in this decade. And I'm not only talking about songs for 11 months of the year that Broadway contributed so much of to the Great American Songbook. I'm talking about this being the era where that 12th month of the year got some of its greatest pieces of work that have stood the test of time, and hundreds of artists have recorded these songs. The Great American Songbook took shape in this decade. And I'll give you one more. This was the decade, I'm sure you know what it is by now, but we'll say it at the end. This is the decade when America first became the superpower that it is. The world was embracing a consumerism that led to lots of new products, many of those new products being phonographs and radios. And radios in homes boomed after this. Radios in cars boomed after this. And I would argue that that is as important for what is the best decade of music as any single song that may have come out of it or any artist. And that, you know what decade I'm talking about.
It is the 1940s, right?
It is the 1940s.
That is so blown out. It just looks like you held up a bandage. Oh, there you go. Thank you.
Here's my bandage.
Handwriting.
Thank you. So I was really trying to find everything else to me felt small. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like the British invasion feels small to me compared to everything collectively that happened in the 1940s. It feels like it was such a leap forward. Just the bridge between Glenn Miller jazz and Thelonious Monk jazz. The move from jump blues to rhythm and blues. The 1940s were the birth of rhythm and blues as a genre. And that led to, R&B, hip hop, lots of great black music that was appropriated and became rock and roll in the South.
Right.
Yeah, I think what you mentioned as being your reasons for putting the 1920s on the list, I think the apex version of that happened in the 1940s.
I think that's a really interesting analysis because I do love that shift, especially as we get more into like bebop, which is really, it is 40s, but to me that feels a lot more 50s. Like,
but bebop came out of the 40s.
Yes, it came out of, and all the great vocalists, Ella Fitzgerald, Billie Holiday.
And
all
not
the great
even
Christmas
just the
music.
individual vocalists and many of the Christmas songs that they recorded, but the fact that individual vocalists became stars in this era, and that kind of invented a new version of the pop star. You know, we wouldn't have Elvis if we didn't have Frank Sinatra and Ella Fitzgerald and all of the other individuals
Bing
that
Crosby.
came out of that. Yeah.
Oh, man. It does feel like now we're into like the most important.
Yeah.
Do you think that music was the best music, the music that was written then? Like if you had to compare it, if you had to, on the whole, go, here's the grade this decade gets for every song written and recorded within it. Would you put it above the entire Beatles songbook, the greatest songwriting team in the history of music?
Yeah. Yeah, I would. I would put Tin Pan Alley and Irving Berlin and all of the songwriters working on 28th Street in New York from the 1880s through the 1950s. I would put those songwriters that created the Great American Songbook, off of which great bands through the years have riffed. So much of this is riffs on classics.
I think the beauty of this as a topic, what makes it fun, is that it's maybe the most subjective thing we could try to settle. And the reason for that being everybody's taste, your taste in what you love in music and what you find important in music is so intensely personal. It can be something that you pick up from friends. It could be something that's just a product of where you grow up. It can be something handed down to you by your family. So Drew Clock, thank you for suggesting this. It's been on it's been in the hopper for a while. I like the way that we ultimately came to it. And when I was talking about the 20, every decade I came to, it was like, oh, here's the importance that it had on everything that came after it. You could argue that the Beatles spawned so many music acts.
Yeah.
Including people like Ozzy Osbourne, who was at the cutting edge of heavy metal being born. That's a guy who wanted to be Paul McCartney.
Yeah.
So, but they were all influenced by Little Richard.
Yeah.
And all the black artists who recorded these great songs, that some of which Elvis would go on and record himself, or Chuck Berry, like all these art, like that's who they loved. They're the little like skiffle groups were trying to write that music. And that music was born out of rhythm and blues,
out of jump
which
blues.
came from
rhythm
jazz.
and blues
So
and jump blues. Yeah.
I do like looking at the 40s as that point where the early, like I would say that like Maybelle Carter and the Carter family, they were early recording stars with vocals, and Hank Williams. There were people who were famous as singers, but the era of the crooner really, really started. The crooner and the singer really came into focus in the 40s. So you got like those early, I mean, Frank Sinatra was a teen idol.
Yeah.
He was an attractive young man that girls went, Bobby Soxers, or the early version of Bobby Soxers, was crazy over.
He wasn't even that great a singer. He just, like, you know, he'd be flat in songs. He didn't care. He just told stories better than anyone else. And that's what made him such a huge star. So everybody, you know, all these individuals, yes, he could sing. I'm not saying Frank Sinatra couldn't sing. He could very much sing. But I think that Frank Sinatra could phrase something in a non-traditional way that classical singers before him, he did not sound like. You know what I mean? And yeah, I think that because it's such a subjective thing, I'm trying to not look just at the canon of songs from that time. I'm trying to look at the big moves in music and how it shaped and changed music for the better. I think that the whole, like, there were now suddenly radios everywhere is as important to the history of music as many of the great songs. But that said, if we want to look at some of the great, great songs ever written, I'm not even going to use the 11 months of the year. I'm just going to look at the 12th month of the year, and I'm going to say White Christmas, Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas, the Christmas song, Chestnuts Roasting on an Open Fire, Let It Snow, Let It Snow, Let It Snow, and yes, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, just making it in 1949.
Yes, written as an ad for a Chicago department store.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah,
And then,
I'm with it.
I mean, every great Broadway song that came out of the 1940s.
You know, that doesn't sway me as much, but I understand how important that is to you. So I'm not saying it's not valid in general. Just for me, it's not. I don't look at what Broadway shows were done. Even then, you can say the 70s was a really good time.
That's
for
true.
Broadway. You had Grease, you had Jesus Christ Superstar, Godspell. You had a lot of musicals coming out of the 70s. And I think Sondheim was doing a lot of stuff then.
Sondheim was doing amazing stuff in the 70s. I'm just thinking of the things early on in the 1940s that galvanized into the Great American Songbook.
Sure. 100%. I think you don't have to work too hard to convince me on that. People of the world, there are probably songs that you like from other decades other than this one. I would bet that your favorite songs, by and large, unless you were heavily influenced by your parents, may come from the first songs that were released in the first 15 years of your life. Even if you liked something earlier, over time you develop a fondness. You know, the music that older kids were listening to in the 80s, I didn't like as much until I got older. And you get imprinted with nostalgia because you remember when those things were big. Mm-hmm. And so when you hear them again, I've had an idea for a while. I'll put it out here. No, I won't. I'll say this, just in case I ever decide to actually write it. I think that music at its very best is a time machine. That's the beauty of it. It connects us with something in our past or in our present, or even makes us think about something in our future.
Mm-hmm.
But also appreciating that the music that you love happened because of a group of marginalized people who were so talented that the music they were creating still persists to this day and influenced a group of artists who had access to things that those original artists did not and carried that music forward, sometimes with at least a little bit of credit, which is a good thing. But the 40s is really an epicenter for music, at least in America where we are. But a lot of the Christmas songs that you sing around the world were born because Jewish people like me were working during the holidays.
Yep. I didn't know which marginalized group you were talking about, if it was Jewish people or black people. And I realized that both of them count. Both of them could fit that criteria.
But I mean, like black people who couldn't play in certain theaters, who had to tour differently. Like it's incredible to see just how much and disproportionately at times marginalized communities and marginalized artists and marginalized people contribute to the history and the culture and the scientific advancement of society. Like it's startling, and it probably explains more stuff than it should. And we don't get political on here, so I will stop and say the best decade for music is the 1940s, asked and answered.
Well, Hal, this topic is closed.
Yeah.
But there are many more topics to discuss. So please reach out to us via email at wegotThisPodcast@gmail.com, or
you can find us on social media at We Got This Podcast. You can find us on Instagram at We Got This Show. You can join the Facebook group. You can go to our Discord, which is where we're getting the majority of our suggestions now. That is bit.ly/WGT Discord. Also subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're at We Got This Podcast after youtube.com, of course, or just look for We Got This Podcast. You'll know because you'll see our faces and our logo. It is really fun. We do all sorts of bonus stuff there. You can find old live streams. You can find right now one exclusive episode with potentially more on the way. Who knows what we're going to do? The only way you'll find out is by subscribing so that you never miss new content. Thank you to producer Ken Plume, researcher Kate McManus, graphic designer Uri Kelman, and QA engineer Jen Alba.
And thanks, of course, to our musicians, Jonathan Dinerstein and Mike Furman, for our score and theme song, respectively. And thanks to you, the people of the world, for giving us a chance to do this. Talk about music. We love talking about music. Let's all talk about music. We'll all gather together. We'll do it. How about here? We'll do it right here at this show, at our Discord. We'll talk about music. You're the reason we do this show. Thank you for that. We couldn't do it without you. We wouldn't do it without you. And to you, we say thank you, thank you, thank you. For Hal Lublin, I'm Mark Gagliardi.
For Mark Gagliardi, I'm Hal Lublin. And don't worry, everybody. We got this.
We got this.
Maximum Fun,
a worker-owned network
of artist-owned shows
supported
directly
by you.